TopMedTalk.
Monty Mythen here. As we prepare to move into the next phase of the COVID crisis, we're going to be widening our focus here on TopMedTalk. We will continue to deliver COVID-specific programs, but we all have a huge additional responsibility as we try to reboot normal services. So although this piece is not directly related to COVID-19, we believe it's information that is crucial to the bigger task of rebuilding the healthcare system as we learn to adapt and live with this new virus. Thank you to our sponsors and to you, our listeners, for helping us to share this important information.
Hello and welcome to TopMedTalk. I'm Desiree Chappell, host and managing editor of TopMedTalk, and I'm joined by Monty Mythen, our editor-in-chief. Hello, Monty.
Hey, Desiree.
Our guest that we have with us, Ross Kerridge from Australia. Ross, how are you?
Well done, Desiree.
He was the father of perioperative medicine. He's now the grandfather
of perioperative medicine. Let's get it going there. So, Ross, you've been involved with perioperative medicine for a long time.
Yeah.
And we have Lee Fleisher, who's a friend of TopMedTalk, with us today. Hi, Lee. How are you?
Fantastic. It's sort of funny because I still remember coming here and Monty's there presenting ERAS, and we would have Henrik Kellett come. And, about 2 years ago in the U.S., in my institution, we had like a champion that we've been doing it for 3-4 years. This is the way we got to go. I discovered it myself in ERAS, and I'm like, well, I've been trying to talk about ERAS since Monty invited me over in 2007. And it's like, okay, now, how long is it going to take for prehab to be accepted in the U.S.?
It'll be the next big thing. Someone said next year, that'll be the word of the year. Yeah, in the Oxford Dictionary, I presume. Does Webster's do that as well?
Webster,
do they have the word of the year? Yeah.
Well,
and you can see that.
It was funny because I was at the Joint Commission, which is our large accrediting body, just 7 days ago. And I said prehab, and about half the room shook their heads, yeah. And the other half of the room said, can you explain that?
Yeah.
And if you type in, the key question is if you type in prehab, does the autocorrect automatically change it to rehab? And so far, it still does.
It still does that.
So I think we will know we've made it when we don't get it autocorrected.
We all had to add it to our dictionary.
Okay, so JAMA Surgery, I think that's predominantly a US journal, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Publishing the guidelines for perioperative care in cardiac surgery, May the 4th, 2019.
Yeah.
And if you look down the list of evidence-based recommendations, about number 12 down is prehabilitation for patients undergoing elective surgery with multiple comorbidities or significant deconditioning.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
think
number
Ross
12.
is right.
Boom.
Well, no, but it's only in order of, the logical order. It's not the ranking of evidence.
Yeah.
But it's on a short list.
Yes.
And it says prehabilitation.
Yeah.
Well, from being on the ground, too, and hearing a lot of this, being in the space, I feel like enhanced recovery, it is a huge undertaking, and you have so many people you have to touch, and there's a lot of processing thing. And I think that prehabilitation is similar, but some of those things are already in place. It's just getting them all together in the same, teams doing it. And you're also engaging the patient a lot more than you are with enhanced. It's all the same, but you're getting to the patient earlier to engage with them instead of just right at the point of contact with enhanced recovery for a lot of places.
Yep.
So,
and it is very much a patient-centered thing.
Absolutely.
And I think we've probably all had the experience with a patient who you have turned their life around. I had a patient only a few months ago who came in and she said, "You don't recognise me, do you?" And I didn't. And I'd seen her about 14 months ago, and obesity, and she said she'd walked out swearing really strong Australian expletives at me, but came back 14 months later. She'd lost 90 kilos, had totally turned her life around, was turning her family's life around, and she said, that night I went home and thought about what you said, and it's changed my life.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so engaging for the patients, and they really want to change and have now the opportunity of somebody to guide them to do it. So I think it's fantastic.
But what we need to do, and I don't know in the UK, but in the US we have a very limited number of geriatricians who sort of get this.
Yep, same here.
And we need the GPs and the internists to begin to understand. And I think, that will be the key question is, can we get them? ERAS, the hospitals are looking at this as a financial potential benefit. But we really need the specialists to take up this.
Particularly with the people who are most likely to gain are that top 5% that we've been talking to here, the ones who are the frail, on the top end of the age range and frailty. And that's where only small amounts of programs, not getting them on bikes for half an hour, but even just walking up and down the corridors makes differences even in cognition as well as their physical.
But as you listen to Franco Carli, we have to do the prehab with the nutrition.
Yep.
It's not simple.
Well, it's very synergistic. I mean, a lot of what he's talking about, but I think a lot of people have made a lot of significant strides with prehabilitation and not doing all those pieces together. So, starting where you can.
I think we had the launch this week of the Macmillan endeavour about prehabilitation in the context of cancer. Now, I was at one of the first working groups for that about 10 years ago, and the conclusion of it was that the cancer practitioners had to go away and re-educate each other first, because when they did a sort of survey of the relative impact of nutrition and exercise, they still had a majority of practitioners who were giving out advice that suggested that you're better off to take to the sofa and look after yourself and eat what you want and go to bed and huddle up under the duvet. And it's taken that period of time to re-educate the practitioners, I think, to be ready to have a campaign, because if we as clinicians don't get it, it's going to be hard to share it with our patients.
But I'm not sure it even needs to go through the clinical venue. I mean, what would be ideal, for the brain health work that we've talked about in the past, is can we get the association's AARP, which is already
agreed, but my point was, if you then go to your doc who says, no, hang on a second, don't overstress yourself, you must rest more, which was what seemed to be happening at the time, you're going to get confusion. Whereas if we all now say moving's important and exercise is important, nutrition's important, then absolutely I agree with you. The avenues are the general public.
So we were having a conversation a little bit earlier about some things that you've been presenting recently on age.
So what's happened? This age-friendly hospital.
Age-friendly hospital, that's what it is.
So in the U.S., there's something called the Hartford Foundation, which is a group that funds care for older adults. We can't say the silver tsunami anymore, because tsunami has a negative connotation in the United States.
Oh, I thought silver had a negative connotation. No offense,
Silver's
Monty.
a good thing.
It is a good. Got lots of it myself.
Yeah, and so they have teamed up with the Institute for Healthcare Improvement and with the American Geriatric Society and now the American Hospital Association Joint Commission to say, when you're older adult, and Monty in our prior discussions, yes, we should be pediatric friendly and we should be the middle-age crisis friendly, but our older adults really are having a lot of the complications. And the question is the huge amount of delirium we see, the huge amount of deconditioning, the huge amount of confusion. So can we make our hospitals friendlier for older adults? So they came up with the 4 M's, which is let's make sure they're on the right medications, let's make sure they have mobility, let's make sure their mentation is maintained, and lastly, let's find out what matters. So in this shared decision-making world, it's not saying let's do shared decision-making, but really let's understand, before they even get to the hospital, what matters to them so that we can focus on those long-term goals. So that's the question will be, can we transition and make sure our hospitals implement some protocols for the older adult to just check on those few things. I don't know, in the UK or Australia, we have a perverse incentive that when patients come to the hospitals, they get checked for falls risk.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they get measured for falls and falls with injury. And in the U.S., everyone believes that if they have falls with injury, that they're going to get this huge black mark, which is true, falls with injury. But they also extrapolate that because we still measure it with falls. Now, do you want to take a patient, you're an intensivist, do you want to walk them, but they may go to knee, and therefore you have to say they had a fall, or do you want to keep them moving as long as they don't get injured? So I don't know what's happening in other areas.
I think both in hospitals and in aged care institutions and just the aged care environment generally, the issues around falls is inducing a whole lot of inappropriate behaviours of keeping people sitting down, avoiding them moving, using chairs, using walking frames, when in the overall scheme of things, most of the time they'd be better being exercised, being allowed to exercise, being encouraged to exercise. But it's not happening.
It almost feeds into the prehabilitation.
Yeah.
I mean,
totally.
If you get them moving before, when they come in, you can keep them moving better.
Mustn't wrap them in too much cotton wool.
No.
I must admit, with the Agefriendly hospital, Lee, which I think it's great that America's coming up with this, but it struck me for some time that in the paediatric section of our hospital we have family is encouraged to visit at all times. Then you have the local sports stars and media personalities and volunteers and hospital fairies and clowns and all sorts of people coming in to keep the kids happy. And I think some of the kids must go home exhausted from having to deal with all these people there to keep them happy. And literally up in the elderly wards, we have people dying of loneliness.
Yeah.
You send the kids up to the
clown doctors and see if anyone notices.
Get them in the same space.
Well, that's a fantastic point, Ross, because I really feel like it's forgotten. I mean, and I think in the U.S., the trend with having nursing homes and, there are a lot of lonely people out there. We're not taking care of them in all the different places. I know that's a bit of an aside, but that's what makes me think of that.
Well, it's interesting. We've hired in our own hospital nursing students. Mm-hmm. Either, I don't know if they're hired or they're volunteers,
like
to come
internships,
and just talk with the older patients, help them around. Sir Norman Foster is designed our new hospital.
Oh.
So,
the Angel of the North. Is that right?
Yes. So it's going to be funny in that my understanding is we're going to have Apple TVs in all the places. So the question is, can you go talk to your friends and family via your Apple TV?
Oh, like FaceTiming.
Yeah.
Yeah, FaceTiming people. That's really interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those things where I think we should be doing all of these things anyway, really. I mean, with, considering the 8 different ages. I mean, I think some of the things that we do in enhanced recovery and perioperative medicine, I mean, we are addressing those things. Ross, I mean, what are you guys doing in Australia now, I mean, as far as this goes?
As far as aged care, there is a Royal Commission, which is the equivalent of Presidential Commission in the US. I'm not sure. Do they have Royal Commissions in Britain?
Yeah,
when you're not talking about Brexit?
We do.
But no. It's a very hot topic at the moment, a Royal Commission into aged care and nursing homes. And so there is a big community concern about what's going on in this sector and care for the aged, but hopefully there will be some good things come out of it.
Well, we're all involved in anesthesia as our background, and the question is, traditionally we've never been involved in that outreach before the patient comes to the hospital, other than, hey, you may come to a pre-op clinic. And I think here in the UK, you certainly are getting more engaged with Monty and Michael and Denny and others' leadership. So the question becomes, what should our role in making sure that patients are informed? I saw what the Royal College is doing with the videos. I mean, how do we make it that patients are, they're starting to talk to their GP, let alone their surgeon, and get them informed about what they can do to get themselves ready?
I think there's the mood music is, if our National Health Service is going to survive, which we all hope it will and thrive, we've got to do more caring and less clever is the sort of strap line at the moment, because the caring bit, and particularly the care of the elderly and keeping them safe and secure, is that's the core of society, and if it's going to be a national health service, that has to be a priority.
Well, and you may know in the U.S., the Democratic candidates are talking about Medicare for all, which essentially is the NHS.
Yeah.
And you should be able to do it, because we keep referring to this. You spend more out of your GDP on healthcare as your equivalent of an NHS embedded in your total spend than we do. You've shown us that data before, Lee. Yeah. Your tax expenditure on healthcare is a higher percentage of GDP than ours.
Absolutely.
So you're already spending the money.
All right, Ross, I have a question.
I think we better wind up and start a war here.
I know.
I'm not starting a war. It's good news.
Well, yeah. So we haven't had many people from Australia that we've interviewed and heard much about what the healthcare system looks like down there. So just as a contrast, or maybe similar, what is the typical, what does it look like there? I'm sure it's like everywhere else,
We have a real mishmash because there's a very active private sector. So 70% of surgery is done in private hospitals in Australia, much less in New Zealand. New Zealand is more comparable to the NHS. But in Australia, we in fact have 8 different health systems because it's all state-based. The community health care is federally based. So the federal government pays general practitioners. The state governments pay the hospitals, the state hospitals. And they're all different. So it's a very confused system. But
seems to work.
Nevertheless, we get good results.
So you guys have great results there.
We have problems, and we have challenges, and we have huge opportunities as well. But I think we can all learn from each other. And one of the great things that I've found over the years in my long time in perioperative medicine,
Ross,
thank you, Desiree. But I think one of the really exciting things is travelling around in my main country, Canada, the US, Britain, of course, Europe a bit, Scandinavia, parts of Asia. All these different systems, but everyone's coming to the same conclusion that ultimately the process works, and the process, the model of care that we're coming up with of very structured early preoperative assessment, preparation systems, prehabilitation, and structured recovery, whether you call it enhanced recovery or whatever. It all makes sense, and the answer is the same no matter where the question's coming from.
But in
that's
that
a really exciting thing.
It is.
In
really
that
exciting.
context, we actually have to give an homage to Monty and Mike and Mark, the founding fathers of EPOM, because this has been the place where a lot of different thought individuals have correct.
Yeah.
And we've taken them back, and we do some variation, bring it back here, and get critiqued.
Well, get critiqued. Well, I love
That's
it.
a good thing.
It's always good to critique you, Lee.
I feel like I'm sitting here with like the giants of perioperative medicine. It's really cool. Thank you guys very much, and thanks for everything that you all have done. Monty, you have a point.
Just on homages, tomorrow night I think there's an expedition going on in the evening, which I think ends at a public house we visited before as part of the expeditions in London, which is the Jon Snow.
Yes.
Who's an interesting character. I think he's born, but basically this is his patch, Jon Snow. If you look up, we're just on next to Russell Square here, and he was at UCL for a while.
He was a graduate from the Newcastle Medical School.
There we go.
I knew it.
Newcastle on Tyne, not Newcastle in Australia.
Yeah. I think he did his later work down here somewhere.
Yeah, then he came down here and
epidemiology.
Was the father of public health and the father of anaesthesia, wrote the first anaesthesia textbook.
And we're going over to have a look at the public house called the Jon Snow, which is next to the
pump.
The pump.
Which is now on Broad Street. That was Broadwick, or was it Broadwick?
No, the other way around. It was Broad Street. It's now called Broadwick Street.
So do we have time to say what the pump is?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, thank you for saying who Jon Snow is, because there are a lot of our listeners that may not know.
May think it's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, there is another Jon Snow, I gather. No, well, in 1850-something or other, there was an outbreak of cholera in Soho, and Jon Snow was the one that realised that the common source was one of the water pumps, in what was then Broad Street, now Broadwick Street. But not only did the science, but got on to the people who had power, particularly the local vicar, I think, to force the authorities to take the handle off the pump. So thereby saying, look, rather than putting a sign up saying, drink this water at your risk or whatever, said, no, the government's got to step in and take the handle off the pump.
And I think we're going to have to look, there's a more complex story there related to a local brewery and people drinking light beer as an alternative to the pumped water and him mapping out the various outbreaks. We'll go into that tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
next time.
We're on very thin ice there.
Okay. Well, on that note, gentlemen, thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you're doing for evidence-based perioperative medicine and to move the needle in the world, because all of you have very strong voices, and I think it's pretty awesome. So thank you very much. And thanks for listening to TopMedTalk. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.
TopMedTalk.
Nick Majerison here. Thanks for downloading TopMedTalk. TopMedTalk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. EBPOM has been advocating perioperative medicine for many years now, using the traditional conference circuit, where people have attended meetings from all over the world and heard some of the latest information. However, in the face of the COVID crisis, EBPOM took a bold decision. We've transposed the entire conferencing experience into an online experience. Carbon-friendly conferencing. The latest information, the latest talks, the hottest experts, the most incisive analysis, and even the socialising. We've got it all covered as EBPOM goes virtual. Hot on the heels of the huge success of EBPOM 2020 live from London, we're now headed towards EBPOM Chicago. Come aboard and be part of one of the most exciting developments in medicine since the stethoscope. EBPOM Chicago. Get yourself to ebpom.org now and guarantee yourself a place at one of the most exciting conferences in the world.